Why does stuff always fall over when I start recording? Hi guys, it's day 2 of Tasty Loops video making using VR, and this morning I dived into Oculus Quill. So we're using Oculus Quill, and it's been a while since I dived into it and everything is falling off my desk. That's why you need to keep organization clean, tidy and neat. Starting recording now. So as you may have seen in my last video, I wanted to look at making something with this style or color scheme or inspiration from this image, which is like really Japanesey, and I love like the purples and the blues. So I thought I would start creating like a journey video in Quill. Sorry, my video is a bit clipped off, so a bit of the screen capture is a bit funny on there. Quill is like an incredibly powerful software, but it does mean that the entry level for you to be able to make stuff in there is quite a steep learning curve. There's a couple of tutorials. I really recommend Goro Fujita's tutorials. There's one with like little flowers. I'll put a link below. You can learn how to make fire, and you can learn how to draw a flower and do basic animation, because when you're using Quill, there's just so many, you know, like if you're using Photoshop or some kind of editing software, there's like heaps of shortcuts that you use. And the thing is, because this is in VR, you're just trying to remember what the buttons do. So you've got like, it's kind of like how you use like Control Copy, like Control C on a keyboard, but there's different variations, and there's quite a lot of controls involved in Quill, and a lot of different elements involved. Like there's layers, there's the whole animation side of things where you actually have individual keyframes that you can use to animate stuff. Something that I learned to do was using this, I'm not sure what it's called, is it like a gimbal 3D viewer? So you've got like the lines, so you've got directional capability to move, and also that means that you can literally, you can move stuff in line with planes. So you can have like a flat plane, and then you can have a direct like 90-degree angle, or you can actually copy and paste stuff in set degrees, so things can look really neat and awesome. And you can like draw and link up from the base so that you have a straight line, or you can have a flat plane. And this will just save you loads of problems, I think, because like imagine if you're drawing a house and like one of the walls is like that, you're not gonna have a great time. So that's just like a really handy thing to get used to in Quill, of how to have things aligned, how to copy and paste with staggers, very technical terms. I love how in this one as well you can split your menus. So there I've got the timeline menu separated, so instead of like switching between menus, you can have one menu here for your timeline, then you can have your brush tools panel, and then you can have like color wheel panel. So you've got your tools here, and then your drawing here, and you can just kind of like select from the ones that you want to use, which is really handy. Here I'm just flipping, I'm going to use the staggered flipping, so then it's on the flat plane. Go, yes. And then using the straight up tool and then straight left tool to drag it on those planes, so it's nice and vertical. So I wasn't really too sure what I was doing at this point. I was just making kind of like an alleyway, and just getting back to grips with using Quill, because it's been ages since I've used the software. Always remember to save as well. This morning there was something I wasn't doing, which meant that the software kept crashing. I was forgetting to optimize your layer, which will actually optimize objects and things that you've drawn. And I get to a point where I've got loads of objects that I've drawn in the space, and my computer literally just kept crashing because I was like screen recording as well as using the VR tool. So just making some lanterns. I'm gonna make a doorway in a sec. And what I do is look to erase some of the line. Where's erase tool? So you have different strengths of the erase. It's basically like you're deleting in terms of opacity on the object. But in Quill, because this is set as a line, you can only color, it's got like stripes. So if I drew the line the other way, I'd be able to erase that way. it's just like you just play around in these softwares and you get to know their little kind of quirks and how to work with them. It's kind of like any creative thing really, like there's always like limitations or something that you need to bear in mind, and you know, you just find like creative ways around them. So here I'm just drawing a door frame. I'm trying to make like a garage. You see the shutter door? And then I want to fill in that gap. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Like I can't colour because that will just colour in the whole line of the door again. So what I actually do is I create a new square and just whack it in behind that space and then colour in the same colour as the blue wall. I'm just going to skip a bit. So here I've made the shutter just by duplicating sections and copying and pasting them up. Just colouring in a bit of shadow. And then I want to draw a lantern. So I start with just drawing using the rounded brush tool, just draw one little blob, and then I'm using the grab tool to actually pull part of those pixels, I guess, to make it a different shape. And this is like really basic, like I'm not going crazy drawing skills at this stage, like I'm really new to this software as well, and it just needs a bit of practice to work out how to get shading and making shapes in there, because there's no stability like in Oculus Adobe Medium. You can actually have it assist how you draw, so you can be drawing, I can actually use my left hand, which I'm not dominant handed with, draw a line and it'll help me. So in Oculus Quill it's sensing every tiny little movement your hand is making, so you kind of need to get that really good drawing skills happening. And that kind of just takes time, and with this piece I was just going like really quick. Making a little lantern. I just drew like a random person, and then I'm drawing a tree. And I find that the nudge tool in Quill is fantastic to create more realistic looking branches, because branches are like really hard to draw. So if you can use this nudge tool to give them a bit more of a jagged shape, it actually feels a lot more realistic. Alright, so there I just drew a quick leaf. So just hand drawing that in. In Quill you actually have a capability to see, you see all these like little lines there? Like crisscrossed like a grid or like a mesh. That is so handy, because without that you find it really hard to judge depth of space in the drawing space. So that's an option there to trigger that, to switch that view on, and that's really helpful. Yeah, it's in that guide, it's the circle. So I make a little leaf and then I colour it in a bit. So I want to do like a light bit on the edge and then like a darker bit towards the bottom of the leaf. So let's colour it in. I love how you can colour in Quill. It's something you can't really do so much in Tilt Brush. With Tilt Brush you can just stomp one colour. With Quill you can have opacity, so you can have a delicate kind of touch of colour on an object. And then also animate colours, so I could have this changing colours over time. And because on the timeline, each keyframe, you can see it. So if for these keyframes, we coloured in this colour, and then these keyframes, another colour, it would change colour over time. There's quite a few different ways you can animate in here, which I'll probably explore a little bit later. So I just did a few leaves together there, and then copying and paste them on the tree. Just kind of a bit random, keep it a bit natural. Alright, so just putting more leaves on. Doing a bit of shading in the trunk. So you can spend ages, like you can spend heaps of time just making like bark effects and like different colorings. But this is just really, I just want to do a quick video, just dive back into Quill, get used to the functionality again, and then play around more with like detail. So just copy and paste the whole tree. And this is where I went wrong, because what I should have done is optimized the object or the layer that tree and the tree stumpy bit and the leaves, because in a few minutes my computer crashes. But Quill is really good for auto saving, so even though it crashes I still had my all the work that I'd done up to that point, which is sweet. Yeah, it's starting to glitch out. Here I just changed the background color to have a look, which is just like changes the whole vibe of the drawing. Just covering up. Yeah, I decided that I didn't want that door. I was just gonna have it like a straight kind of corridor. And then we start. Oh, I thought it was gonna crash. Here is a really interesting technique that I learned from Goro Fujita. Basically, oh, can I skip back a little bit? Yeah, I start a new layer. What you do is you draw a semicircle, is it? Just like a section of a circle. And then you use the selection tool, show your gimbal tool, place that in the center, because what we want to do is turn this C into a circle. And this is basically a skybox. So you can create this rounded orb, which is hollow, and then you can use the colorizer tool to make highlight color, create color, and make like a horizon. Because what you do is you take this orb, put it around your whole drawing, and then you can have a really cool skyline. So I'm just copying and pasting using that round axes on that gimbal to create. It can just copy and paste. You just literally have to just like flick. I think you just flick up the trigger just to repeat it, and it's super satisfying. So I'm just making like a half circle, and you can use the thick and thin, so you can increase the thickness of the line, and this is going to fill in the gaps there. Yeah. And then the idea was I'm going to put him behind. Oh, and then we crash. Yeah. I don't really get annoyed when things crash. I actually have this weird feeling like when something's crashing, it means that I'm doing lots of cool work. So I kind of like don't really get stressed out, because you just gotta remember to save your stuff and you don't need to be stressed about stuff crashing. All right, so we recovered the scene. We're back in the zone. So I'm making a new, I'm actually making keyframes here. And this is, does it crash again? No. Oh, I think that's why it crashed, because I started to make keyframes and then it just really got pretty processing heavy. Optimize. So that last button in Quill, you can optimize all your layers, and it doesn't affect the drawing so much, but it just helps with the processing power of the app. I guess it's an app, isn't it? Like the game, art game. So don't forget to optimize if you're starting to do lots of hectic things in Quill with lots of objects, layers, and animation. So let's have a look at the timeline here. The timeline is, just look at all those buttons. Like there's heaps of stuff you can do in this software, which is crazy. But basically, if you've done any kind of video editing, you've got your timeline, so you've got the safe space in time, and you've got layers on which can be on top. So if something's on top layer, it'll be in front of the objects in the space. But because we're in this 3D environment, these layers basically mean that if these pens are on separate layers and I chose this layer, we could move this layer independently. So if these two objects here were on the same layer, we moved that layer, it would move everything on. I feel like I need some like better things to show examples rather than just a pen and some chapstick. So yeah, layers. So also like you could change the whole color. If you wanted to color in this one on a separate layer, it would just color in that one, which is really, really handy. What was the term? I was watching this tutorial about using Procreate app, and basically when you're thinking about layers, if I drew these two things on one layer, it can be quite destructive destructive drawing, because it means if I want to move this one, I'd have to maybe like cut around it and then move it and then fix it up. But if they're on separate layers and I wanted to move this one, I could move it really easily. So just think about it like if you're drawing different objects in your space, keep them on separate layers, because it's just going to do you heaps of service when you want to edit things or change things in the future. So your timeline layers, and then you've got the space of time, so you've got the seconds up there. Basically what I'm doing here is we're going to get one of the leaves, and what we're going to do is create keyframe, a few keyframes, which basically duplicates everything on that layer in that position. So I'm going to duplicate, 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 and then I'm going to play the timeline, and using the nudge tool, I'm going to nudge that layer. And on a loop, that means that the leaf will just keep nudging. So let's have a look how we do it. So creating keyframes, and then what I do is I choose a selection of those keyframes, because the idea was that I can have it as a perfect loop. So the keyframe at the beginning will be the keyframe at the end, and the ones in that selection layer are the ones that I'm just manipulating. So I've got my keyframes, and then I'm trying to find the loop, toggle loop button, because there's heaps of buttons. Here we go. Play the loop, and then there's also another setting. I needed to toggle the loop just in the time frame, so I think that's one of the options there with like the brackets. Alright, so I'm ready. It's playing. It's just playing on those selected keyframes, and you can see, because there's different sections, you see that darker blue section, and then on these lighter sections, because the player is looping, basically that darker blue section is what you'll see just continuously on. But I'm basically just looping within that selected area, so that's like another 2 ways that you can be looping stuff. So there's just heaps you can do in this software. So what I'm doing now, I've got the nudge tool, and I'm going to do, like I said, like just select the leaves and give them a little wiggle. And this will create some kind of like wind effect, I guess. But to be honest, like I don't really think about it too much. Like if there is wind, like kind of you get more of like a swaying motion. I think this effect works better on grass, because you've got like the grass will be moving like this. But for this one, like it looks a bit hectic and a bit odd. But as I say that, I'm just getting back into it, so it's not a perfect sculpting session. Just nudging, nudging, nudging. Alright, so here I'm thinking about doing something with the floor to make it look interesting. I was going to do like little squares, but then I started drawing this like kind of geometric gritty pattern. I really like it, so I just kind of rolled with it. I'm doing it on the flat plane, so they're kind of basically all on the same, they're not actually on one plane, but they're all at the same angle, if that makes sense. Undo. So undo is really easy to do in this software, as well as all the other kind of VR tools. Selecting that section, and then do I move it? I do a bit of colouring, colour it in a bit. So that's just on that layer 9, you can see there, just giving a bit of a quite energetic colouring there. Pretty enthusiastic. I could just be happy like just colouring stuff in every day, honestly. And then we're just adjusting there on the floor. And then I think I do a copy and paste. Ooh, making it a bit bigger. Bit of copy and paste action on the floor. And I was really keen to like see what it looked like in a photo, but then I was like, just keep going, just like copy and paste to the end of the road before I get too excited. Yeah, one more. Nice. And then we go to camera, and I look to take a picture. Oh yeah, taking that mesh off. So that's what I was talking about, being able to see depth in your piece. But I found that before, I think that if that mesh is on and you do a video or camera capture, that mesh, you can actually see it in the export. So just have to turn that off when you're exporting your pictures. And look how cute that is. Isn't that cool? Can I bring up the photo of what it looks like? Yeah, so it looks really cool. The colour looks a bit different, I think, to like how it actually is in Quill. Almost look a bit more like contrasty, but still pretty cool. And like something I found like when you're using VR tools, because you're in this like infinite space, right? It's kind of like a bit much to think about in terms of composition. It's kind of like in real life when you go like this to like see how something would be framed up. It just makes like a huge difference when you get the camera tool out in the software and then start to like see what's happening, especially if you're going to use it for like a 2D video export. That's just something I found over time, that it helps me get perspective. Haha! I love a good pun. Get perspective of what you're doing, and also think a bit more about composition of space by busting out the camera tool in whatever software you're using. So what am I doing now? That's really handy. You can, when you've got the paintbrush tool and you want to select the color, there's no eyedropper option, but literally you just go to that paintbrush already, and then you can I don't know what the term is, but you basically eyedrop that brush and color. It's just like a shortcut. I think it's one of the A or B buttons. So you have your paintbrush in this hand and then use that to select that color that already exists. So now I'm just blending that background in, and you can see how do a bit of color at the bottom to give that skyline effect or horizon effect. Go a bit higher up. Whoop. I could blend it a bit more, and also if I'd have done more lines in my skybox, there wouldn't be such a visible line going down it as well. But I think like the effect is just really handy, just like a really handy tool, and especially if you're creating something in a space that you want to be like a sky or something, create that round skybox, do a horizon, and then everywhere around you, you have that horizon. Because other than that, you have just a solid color in Quill as your background. So that's looking pretty cool. So I take some videos and then I'm like, this isn't really like as impactful as it could be. So I end up just destroying the walls that I made at the beginning. And then I change the black background, which I think it makes it a lot more interesting and powerful. Here I'm just like taking pictures and seeing how it looks in different shapes. And then we make some leaves. Another way that you can animate stuff in Oculus Quill is by using the animated brush. And basically what you need to do, remember the timeline? You need to have your keyframes in the timeline, and basically on that layer you are drawing with the brush, and I'll show you how that works. So we're on layer 14 here. I just did a little drawing there, that pink line, and obviously it's not animated. And I'm like, what? So what I do is I have to create my keyframes. There we go. So that number going up, that's the keyframes that I've made. It actually shows you what keyframe you're on in that little little circle dealy. You got the number there. That's playing on repeat now. So I just drew a new line, and there you can see it kind of flashes and draws in the path that you're doing. So I thought about like doing it along, going down the path. That could work really well for like a river effect. But then I'm like, hold on, what do we got here? We've got little leaves. There's a really cute way to draw leaves in Quill. So what you do is you use the flat, I don't know what it's called, flat square brush. So there's like a cube brush, and then you got like a flat square brush. And what you do is you have to get into the mindset of a falling leaf. So you're like kind of like how a feather floats down. And then that's how you draw it. And with that animated brush on, it creates, oh, is it doing it? Brush duration. So turn the brush duration down so it's a lot quicker. And here we get into the zone of leaves. Leaves? Leaves? So that's quite a nice gentle falling effect. So basically I just kind of draw that on all the different spaces where like the leaves are falling down. I don't know what I'm doing there. Oh, I'm trying to duplicate a branch and then it just starts glitching out again. Optimize your layers. And I was thinking to make it look a bit more kind of realistic in terms of the space and the scene. I was like, where are all these leaves falling to? Like they're just disappearing. So what I want to do is just make like a little pile of leaves. Oh, my battery's running out. Making a pile of leaves. Alright, we're back. Okay, so what we're doing, leaves. So yeah, I made a little pile and then I'm just colouring them in a bit, shading them a little bit. And that's kind of taken directly from a technique from Goro, because he did like this beautiful little autumnal scene where there's leaves falling and then there's a stack on the floor. And what I could have done is use that little square stack, then duplicated it a lot, and then use that to make a whole floor covering. But I just decided like I'm just going to put like a few at the base of the trees where the leaves are falling. And you can see why I get sometimes carried away and a bit too keen to do copy and paste, because it's so rewarding like to create all these different objects in the space. But just definitely think about detail on what you've done before you start copying and pasting. This is quite a simple scene though. Alright, we've got the leaves happening. So that looks pretty cool. Then I decided just to like try out some different colours, so it just makes like a different effect, hey, with the background colour. So I did a green and then I've gone to a white, which is really bright right now. Then I'm using the camera tool and I'm doing a vertical one, so I can use that for Instagram stories or vertical rectangle videos. I find that doing the standard rectangle is really good for cropping into square videos. I was like raving there. For like the square videos, because obviously that rectangle easily crops to that. But if you're filming at this, quite high, tall, and you want to crop square, you don't get as much content in the video. So just filming there. One thing I've realized is that Quill still doesn't have a camera path tool. So if you've seen the previous videos, so Tilt Brush has got a camera path tool, and so does Tivori, another software I use, which just makes filming the movement of camera really smooth. But in here you have to hold, literally, I'm like holding it with two hands and like gently moving it across the scene. But that's alright. Just taking some little pics. Whoa. Here I'm like, oh yeah, this is because like, oh, we're in VR, so like I've kind of done my scene, I've got my shots, and now I'm like, let's just like blow it up to like massive scale so I can just have leaves falling on my face. Is this where I make it bigger? Yeah. Whoop, I'm kind of underground there. So now I'm like looking up to the leaves, just trying different angles. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm not sure exactly how long that took me to make, probably about an hour, maybe more, because it had been a while since I've been in that software. And it's kind of funny because like I'm like used to doing undo with certain buttons like in Tilt Brush and Tivori, and then in this one it's a different button. So it's just like a little bit of an adjustment there in the buttons you're using to do all these shortcuts and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. Like a lot of examples I've seen with Tilt Brush, some like the really superb examples, like let me just show you right now because we're talking about it. So like this is one of the craziest things that I've seen in Oculus Quill so far. So basically this is called Alix's Sci-Fi World, and it is just a thing of beauty, so I'd highly recommend you check that out. But that is all drawn in Oculus Quill. So imagine drawing the lines that I was making, and imagine like recreating this in VR. So every single line is like hand drawn, and the shading is done, and then you've got all these movements. So you've got rain coming down, you've got animated movements of people looking, bodies moving. Like this is just a crazy cool example of animation in Quill. And what's really cool about Quill as well is that they have the theatre, so you can dive into these drawings and like have a look around for yourself, and it's just really inspiring. Like look at this, like this is so much detail. And there's another thing where you can actually put a location marker of the viewer, so you can make yourself, you can like basically here they've popped you in this moving vehicle, so you can like go on journeys and adventures within these VR spaces. Like you can put yourself on a boat or like have yourself flying around. Really fun. And I love because it's like hand drawn, you get a bit more of like a sketchy effect. So I feel like that's why it does apply more to, oh, is that like a Half-Life symbol on the wall? Yes. It does apply to more comic book style effects because it is quite a simple line, like quality of line, but it looks freaking awesome. And then like another really cool example you can check out in the other videos is of the Multiverse Bakery. And that is just like a thing of beauty that you can experience. The Multiverse Bakery is probably more tailored towards that interactive experience rather than just kind of like a video piece that you can watch. So you're kind of following along on this adventure. So then they're thinking about, you know, where does the viewer, where they're looking, how do we get them to look at something that's happening over here? Because they could be looking this way and miss all the action. So then you kind of dive into these almost like immersive theatre quality considerations in the drawings that you're doing. So you're thinking about sound, you're thinking about character direction, you're thinking about how the audience, like the person with the headset, is in that space and how they're going to experience things happening around them. And I just, like, there's just so much involved, and I just think it's a really interesting time to see these more like high-end pieces come out, and then just like let the new generation, well, we're all new generation really to this bloody VR world. It's just really cool to see these high-end pieces and get inspired by how awesome they are, and then just like try and create our own adventures and our own experiences for people in VR. So something I highly recommend. Check out, if you've got a headset and haven't used Quill, just dive in and check out the Quill Theatre, and you can experience all these drawings that people have made in the spaces and go on adventures and just witness some really cool art and design and sound design and music design too. Alright, so that's day 2 of Tasty Loops. I'm going to take the weekend off and I'll be back on Monday and come up with some new drawings. I've actually haven't had access to Devori for the last few days, so hopefully I'll be back in there and I can show you what I do in that paid for software where I can create these like crazy 3D renders and stuff. So I hope you guys have a great weekend and have a great day, night, morning, whatever, wherever you are. And take care, lots of love, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye!